In this video I will talk about some of the ways in which meditation can be introduced and incorporated into one's daily life. It's important that we understand meditation is for the purpose of changing one's life for the better. It's not enough to think that meditation is something you'll take on as a hobby or as something you'll do on the weekend. It's not something which is likely to bring fruit that way. Meditation is for the purpose of changing one's life, making one's life more productive for oneself and more helpful for other people, and more happy and more free from worry and stress and trouble. But if we're going to effect such a change, it's important that we introduce certain concepts into our life, and the first one is virtue. That if we're going to live a life with a clear mind and a pure heart, it's important that there be certain things which we abstain from partaking of as a rule. And so as a rule, traditionally, when we practice meditation, we undertake 5 rules. And these 5 rules are: 1, we undertake not to kill ants or mosquitoes or any living, breathing being, any animal life form which we know is there and which we see as alive, or telling someone else or encouraging someone else to kill or to commit suicide, for instance. The second rule is not to steal. We undertake as a rule not to steal, not to take things which the owner has not given us permission to take. Number 3, we undertake not to commit adultery or sexual misconduct of any sort. So having romantic or sexual involvement with other people's partners or spouses, or people who are engaged or otherwise involved with another person. The 4th rule which we take is not to tell lies, not to say things in order to deceive other people, in order to confuse people and bring them further away from the truth. And the 5th rule we undertake is not to take drugs or alcohol. That as a rule we will not indulge in things which will be a cause to muddle the mind, or to darken the mind, or confuse the mind. Again, as we're in meditation, we're trying to create a clear thought. These 5 things are things which will cause the mind to become disturbed, upset, stressed, worried, afraid, angry, dark, mean, evil, and so on. They are things which confuse the mind, which take away the clarity of mind which we're trying to create. So for a person who is seriously keen on having the practice of meditation change their lives for the better, these 5 things are important, something important that one should seriously undertake and try to live up to in their lives. This is the first important point. The second important point is how to incorporate the actual formal practice into one's daily life. And this takes things like moderation. We have to be moderate in our sleeping, be moderate in our eating, be moderate in our partaking of entertainment or diversion of all sorts. Because in the practice of meditation, of course, we want to incorporate it into our daily routine. So ideally, when we wake up in the morning, preferably we wake up maybe a half an hour earlier or an hour earlier, depending on how much time we have. If we have a short time, even just a half an hour will give us enough time to perform mindful prostration 3 times, do walking meditation for 10 minutes, and do sitting meditation for 10 minutes. And then in the evening before we go to sleep, if we go to sleep a half an hour later, or go to our room a half an hour earlier before we go to sleep, even that half an hour in the morning and in the evening is a way to incorporate the meditation into our life and to create some real hope that it could have an effect on our lives and could change our lives for the better. But this requires things, of course, this requires moderation in sleeping, but it will also require things like moderation in eating, not eating in excessive amounts of food, or food which is unconducive for mental development, fatty foods or junk foods or so on. These are things which we have to keep in mind, that we are moderate in our eating and eat light meals, which will allow our minds to be fresh and to be bright instead of being lazy and slothful and full of mental torpor and so on. And we have to be moderate in our indulgence, in how we engage in activities apart from meditation. So if we spend all of our time watching TV or watching movies or going out to bars or parties or listening to music, well, instead of doing all of these things to such an excessive level that they become a very real routine in our lives, we start to take some of these things out, which we can see, though we do over and over again, we can see that these things don't bring us peace and happiness, that in the end they leave us only with a state of discontent, needing more and more, ever and again, more and more, until finally we come to a crisis where we can't get the things that we want. And when we can't get enough of the things which we want, this is what creates suffering. It creates a state of sadness and despair in our lives. So instead of letting it come to that point, we take some of these things out and replace them with meditation. So here we have practice in the morning, practice in the evening. Now we start to incorporate it into our daily life as well. If we can find time in the afternoon to take a break for another half an hour, that would be exceptional. We can do it 3 times during the day in normal daily life. But even though we can't, we take some of these things which are diversions out of our life, and instead we find a little bit of time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and take it to be simply peaceful and quiet, and close our eyes and watch the stomach rising and falling, or watch our thoughts, and create the clear thought about these thoughts, changing our mind, bringing our mind back into the focus of the present moment. And we say to ourselves, rising, falling, and so on, as I've explained in the other videos. And we do this, the important thing to note here is we do this by taking out of our lives certain things which are useless, which are fruitless, which in the end are simple diversions, which in the end will bring us no lasting peace and happiness. They only create a sense of lust and desire and craving in our minds, which can never truly be fulfilled. This is the second point. The third point which we have to keep in mind is that when people ask how many hours a day we should be practicing, well, the answer is how many hours you sleep. Subtract that from 24, and that's how many hours a day you should be practicing. The meaning here is, even though we're not doing the mindful prostration or the walking or the sitting, we should be practicing mindfulness. Our mind should be clear, and we should have a clear thought about what we are doing, what we are saying, what we are thinking at all times. And we do this by keeping track of our 4 postures: standing, walking, sitting, and lying down. When we're standing, we say to ourselves, standing, standing. When we walk, walking, walking, walking. When we sit, sitting, sitting. When we lie down, lying, lying. When we bend, bending. When we stretch, stretching. When we turn, turning. When we reach for something, reaching, grasping, and so on. And the more we can incorporate this into our lives, the more likely it is that the meditation will bring about clarity of mind, and our minds will become pure, our hearts will become pure, and our lives will start to improve and develop in a spiritual, in a wholesome, and in a peaceful way. And also, besides the 4 postures, keeping guard on the 6 senses: the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the heart. The heart is the mind. So the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body, and the heart, or the mind, heart, mind. By guarding these 6 senses, we create a sense of constant mindfulness, so that when we see something, instead of liking it or grasping for it or being upset by it, instead we're simply aware of it. So seeing, we say seeing, seeing, hearing, hearing, smelling, tasting, feeling, thinking. When we say these things to ourselves, seeing, seeing, and so on, we create this state of clarity of mind. Altogether, these are the 3 things which will create a lasting impression on our lives, and can hope to change our lives for the better, and create a state of peace and happiness for us in this life, and up until the point where we pass away. That's all today. Thank you.